Welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm Ket.
I'm Davius.
This is episode number 57. I guess I can pull up the outline just in case we meander to the topic of.
Oh, in case we start scrolling.
Sorry, in case we start doing a little scrolling. Did a little scrolling last night. Chit-chatted with Dr. Professor. He jumped in voice.
Nice.
And that was good. We mostly just kind of ignored each other while doing Battlegrounds because we couldn't concentrate on two things at once.
We got to get Dr. Professor fully integrated on the PC and A.
I was talking to him, man. It's going to be hard. He's like me. He has a stamina and magicka of every character fully leveled on a completely different platform.
That's a lot of leveled characters. That's a lot.
Like his whole life is on this other platform. So I could understand how he's only just logging in once in a while on PC and A. I'd probably be the same way. Like I'm trying to imagine if I had to just start all over, or I could just go log in with all my characters that I know and love. You know, it's gonna be hard not to just do that. Anyway, you want to talk about PTS?
PTS 7.1.1 even. No, wait. 7.1.2. Dang it.
Well, so 1.1 was last week.
Restart it. Start over.
Okay. Welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about... So, like right now, as we're recording, this is week 3 right now. But last week was week 2. Typical week 2. That was version 7.1.1 of PTS. A reminder, the name of this patch coming up is called Waking Flame. Typical week 2, just a bunch of fixes, adjustments, a lot of it just centered on the new dungeons that are coming out. But there are a couple of things, or a few things that were actually in week 1, the week 1 patch, but they weren't in the notes.
I love that the highlight from the week 2 patch notes was the things they forgot to include in week 1.
Yep, those are the highlights. That's the most exciting thing. Things that happened didn't actually happen that week at all.
Oh, that's great.
But the Dragon Knight Corrosive Armor Ultimate now gives both types of penetration rather than just physical penetration. So that's really nice. Like MagDKs will probably totally use that ultimate now, I imagine. It's a really, really good ultimate. Deadly Strikes, the 5-piece bonus was nerfed a little bit. What are they doing to my poor Betsy?
Ooh, that's a big one.
It's pretty small. It's an 18% buff to your damage over time and channel time abilities rather than 20%. But now it will work for any damage type, not just stamina-based damage types. So a Magicka build theoretically could use it, except the 2 through 4-piece bonuses are not going to be great.
I'm thinking about this. Is there a Magicka build out there you can think of on top of your head that's going to somehow find a way to use this?
It would be tough, unless it's just like some sort of hybrid that kind of leans Magicka, just because those 2 through 4-piece bonuses I think would be totally dead on a Magicka build. But I don't know, like, we'll kind of talk a little bit later. There's going to be a lot of weird hybrid builds possible, so I think you never really know what we're going to see. I think things could get real weird, honestly. This one I think is going to be a pretty big deal for a lot of people. The Sword and Shield, or the One-Hand and Shield, Sword and Board passive will now give you weapon and spell damage instead of just weapon damage. And already a lot of Magicka builds use Sword and Shield, so that'll just be a straight buff to them for like MagDKs, MagPlars.
A lot of Magicka players are going to be real happy about that.
Yeah, that's nice. I think it's just a 5% boost, but that's something.
Yep.
So that's really it for week 2. And then week 3, that's happening right now, version 7.1.2. Really a kind of a mild week 3 also. And I think we can kind of expect this to be what the patch more or less looks like. I don't even expect minor number adjustments after this, except for like probably a lot of stuff around the dungeons and maybe some stuff with companions and that kind of stuff.
Fixes, things like that.
Yeah, but I don't see a lot of things changing from what we're seeing right here, because this all just seems about right. Sorcerer, we were joking about this in Discord a couple of days ago. The Ball of Lightning ability has been nerfed. It only absorbs projectiles if they're aimed at you, like the person who casts Ball of Lightning. and it will only absorb one projectile per second rather than once every 100 milliseconds. That's a pretty big nerf.
Nerf them
the joke
more.
is
nerf them more.
Yeah.
Nerf them more.
I'll always take a Sork nerf in any form, for sure. The joke is, though, it's like, how many complaints do you see about Ball of Lightning versus the other morph, Streak? That's by far the more popular morph, by far the one that people complain about the most. Didn't get touched at all. The less popular morph they thought was a problem, though, which, I mean, I think, granted, it was a bit overpowered, but the fact that it is overpowered and everyone still chooses to use Streak maybe says a little something about Streak, you know?
Yeah. If you think this one's overpowered and 85% of players are using the other morph, what does that tell you?
Yeah, I think just revert the change where they made Streak unblockable.
Just make it blockable. Just
such a head scratcher when that happened. It wasn't blockable, or it was blockable before. Why change it? Even Sorks were like, "What? Okay,
what did you do?"
Yeah. It was still an amazing ability even when it was blockable, like not necessary. I think we would all just be in a happy place. Then you see that Meteor Ultimate coming at you, just put up the block button and you'll probably be fine. Anyway, Ball of Lightning morph. It only will absorb projectiles if they're aimed at you rather than allies that are nearby. And only one projectile per second. That's kind of big too. So if you're light attack weaving abilities at them, some stuff's going to get through. You're going to hit them with like half of those abilities. So it's a pretty good nerf if you ever encounter someone who happens to be using it. This one's just funny. They just can't let a patch. They can't even let an iteration of PTS pass without nerfing champion points somehow. They gotta do it. Just let's squeeze in a CP nerf real quick. In the fitness constellation, the Juggernaut Star, this is the one that reduces damage that you take while you're CC immune. It's 5 stages, and right now on live it gives you 2% mitigation per stage. That's 10% total when you're CC immune. Being reduced to 1% per stage, so that'll be 5% total. And that's one that I do use on a couple of characters, although we don't really do a lot of CP PvP, so I don't really care a whole lot, but I could see that being annoying. That thing's cut in half.
Yeah. That's just what the random generator came up with for what CP would be nerfed this time. They just have a program that is just, ding, 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 ding. Oh, fitness. All right. That's the one.
It's so funny. Like it's already like the CP rework was already such a major nerf over the previous version of CP, and it just continues. It's like they've just like scraped the icing completely off the cake almost. The new Plague Break set. This is one of those new rewards for the worthy sets that Zergbuster set, the stamina one. This is the one where dealing direct damage to an enemy turns them into a plague carrier for 10 seconds, which just gives them a dot. And then if it's cleansed, it explodes and deals disease damage in an 8-meter radius, and then it's 10% increased damage per enemy hit. It had a 10-second cooldown. Now it has a 100 millisecond cooldown, and it only applies to targets who don't already have it. So I'm just thinking you can spam arrow spray into a group of players, and each time you spam that, it's going to apply it to a new target and a new target and a new target and a new target over and over and over again.
This thing's just going to nuke groups, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah.
Do you know the damage on it? Have you looked it up, like on PTS?
No, I need to log into PTS and like equip it on one of my characters that have some good stats and see what it looks like. Because I really don't know, but I imagine people are going to be able to cheese it. I mean,
well, the reason I ask is because if it's decent damage, I could see this even having usage in BGs. It depends on what that damage is. Is the only time it's going to deal a lot of damage is if it gets that that 10% buff per players, or is it going to be
like
just
how many
decent?
players does it have to hit for it's like really good damage?
Yeah,
I don't know. Something tells me it'll be strong for it being a new set. They state in the notes that they want this to be capable of taking out groups. In BGs, one person on one team could potentially target 8 players at a time. I imagine that would hit hard in that case.
Yeah.
Because an 8-meter radius, even a massive like 20-person Zerg, it's not going to hit more than that many players at a time, I wouldn't think.
I really like it that it is this way. I think it's cool that it procs when you cleanse, but
that's neat.
It's a cool idea, but it's like, man, that's a game changer. There's so many people that just spam cleanse, so it's just like I could see this thing. I could see the possibility where this thing hits like 4 times before the group's like, what is happening to us?
Yeah, and like I was saying, if you just spam arrow spray into a group 4 times, now all 4 of those people have that. And, MagPlars are about to get some pretty nice buffs. I think they're going to be pretty popular this next patch. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of cleansing. Wardens are never not going to be popular.
Yeah, Wardens are doomed.
So yeah, I guess it's just like you said, it depends on how much damage is. Is it just kind of like this sustained pressure kind of thing? Or is it something that's like going to nuke your team if it hits? We'll have to see. I'll have to log in and see what it looks like on one of my characters. What else? That's Plague Break. Battle Spirit. This is kind of the big juicy thing of this week. The damage mitigation. If you remember last week, the damage mitigation that Battle Spirit gives you it was 2 weeks ago, was increased to 55% rather than the 44% that it is right now. This week on PTS, they dropped that down to 50%. Battle Spirit will reduce damage by 50%, which I believe is what it used to be. So we're just kind of back where we started.
Come full circle.
So 50% mitigation from Battle Spirit, and your healing received is now reduced by 55% instead of 50%. So a little bit of a healing nerf and a little bit of a resistance buff, compared to live. Mm-hmm. So you'll take a little less damage, but when you do take damage, you'll have a slightly harder time healing up after that. But I was thinking about this. You think before 2 patches ago versus now, healing is like astronomically stronger than it used to be because of all the stat increases that we got from Flames of Ambition. So, a little 5% healing nerf there, I don't think is really going to be that big of a deal, especially considering we're getting that mitigation buff. So I don't think we're even going to notice that. Healing is already so strong right now.
I actually liked their explanation on this. I can't remember what it was word for word, but essentially what they said is, they made this change because the concern was people, are players going to be too tanky, and they said they don't want people to be overly tanky. They don't want people stalling, PvP and just sitting there and becoming target dummies.
They want to avoid stalemates,
right? But they want players to kind of live through these kind of crazy high burst combos, and where players aren't just getting annihilated without knowing what's going on. More often it can still
Sork one-shot builds.
It can still happen, obviously, but they are trying to at least give players a chance to live through these kind of crazy burst combos, and I actually agree. I think there's probably a good middle ground there.
Yeah, this seems fine to me. I wonder if this is like a planned strategy of theirs, because it always goes this way. Week 1, they do this thing and everyone's like, whoa, that seems a little crazy. Actually, what they do in week 3 is what they planned all along.
You've said that before, is that they're like, hey, make them mad about this, then when we bring it back to what we want it, everybody will be happy. Because
if they'd started with this, then we'd get mad at this,
Yep.
And so I'm on to you. This does seem right. It worked, because to me, this does seem like it seems all right. But I want to talk a little bit more about this Battle Spirit, just so we have a little bit more understanding of what this is actually going to feel like compared to your current experience on the live server, and some other factors that are definitely going to be coming into play. So Battle Spirit, we're going to be getting some 6% extra damage mitigation from Battle Spirit. You might see some people on the forums or in chat and stuff like that refer to that as effectively 10% mitigation, or maybe like 11% mitigation, in that ballpark. So I'm going to try to explain what that means. And I think the easiest way to do that is just to give an example, like a hypothetical example. You know how much I love hypotheticals. We're going to go for easy math here. So let's say we have an ability that has a 1,000 damage tooltip, and you're going to go duel another player, and let's suppose that they only have Battle Spirit for damage mitigation, nothing else. They don't have any armor or anything. So on the live server, you hit them with a 1,000 tooltip. Battle Spirit will reduce that by 44%, which means you'll hit them for 560 damage. We hop over to PTS, do the same thing. It's going to reduce it by 50%, which means it'll be 500 damage. So that's a difference of 60, which is exactly 6% of 1,000. So the math checks out, right? But if you consider the fact that you were never dealing 1,000 damage, you were dealing 560 damage. So that 60 damage loss, that's like 10 to 11% of 560. So your experience is actually going to be more like a 10 to 11% damage loss. The tooltip's losing 6%, but you're losing more than that. This is probably a good place to talk about a question that our old friend Dr. Professor had in the chat a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about this. He asked, how does Battle Spirit interact with other sources of damage mitigation that you have in your build? And I looked into it just a little bit just to make sure I had a clear understanding of it before I tried to answer it. And so I think I know what's going on here. So what happens is Battle Spirit takes its cut of the damage first. So it'll take that 1,000 tooltip, take it down to 500 on PTS. That happens before anything else. Then each source of mitigation that you have just kind of lines up one by one and takes its cut out of whatever's left. So say you're getting 30% mitigation from your armor, that comes in and that takes 30% of 500, not 30% of 1,000, but 30% of 500 off of the damage. Then like if you have major protection, it'll reduce whatever's left by 10% of that amount, right? And then just so on with each source, it just takes its cut out of whatever's left. What do you think about that, Davius? I feel like I've been talking a long time.
Math, numbers. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, there is a lot of details to it. I think it's important to realize the real effective mitigation. Because I think that the 6% obviously in perfect math works out, but the 10% is important to know that you're never dealing, in your example, you're never dealing that 1,000 damage. So that 1,000 damage is very unreal because it's never actually happening. Yeah,
and it makes you realize how, like, a lot of times, like, seemingly small numbers actually can have a really big impact on how it actually feels in your experience.
That's what I was just about to say, is that it's only a 6%, but it effectively is a lot bigger deal than that. I still think it's going to be good. I like the idea of being a little bit tankier and making fights last a little bit longer, because there are times, and I know you know this, in Battlegrounds right now, where you'll just be standing there and you'll finish a fight, and then somebody will come out of nowhere and they've got all their perfect bursts lined up, and you're just like, all right, there's no chance of me even coming close to living through that. So maybe making that a little less common, I think, is going to make Battlegrounds a little bit better.
Yeah, this is going to be a Davius meta. It's the Summer of Davius.
Oh, hey, I'm all about that.
I like it when people die fast. That's just kind of the play style I've become accustomed to. But I don't know. This actually doesn't seem so bad until you get into some of this other stuff here. So the 6% increase to Battle Spirit, that mitigation, that alone, I think maybe would not be a big deal, but there's some other stuff to consider here. So we didn't talk about this on the last episode, even though it was in the notes. The Alliance War revealing flare ability that reveals stealth enemies, it's now going to grant major protection at all times while slotted. So that's basically just guaranteed on every player's back bar, just permanent major protection on your defensive bar all the time.
I'm actually not a fan of this one, and mainly just because by them doing this almost becomes a required skill, and I don't like skills becoming required skills for players where almost every player has to have a skill slot. I don't like the fact that almost every player that we come across now is going to have this on their bar slot. That's not fun. That's not diversity. That's everybody using the same skill.
And I looked it up. The only other sources of major protection are things that are very conditional and temporary. It's like tied to an ultimate or something like that, or some condition. You can't just have it all the time, but now everyone will. Now, minor protection is already super common. Most builds already have a source of minor protection. At the very least, the Sigic Order Temporal Guard Ultimate, it grants minor protection at all times while slotted, so you could have both of these on your back bar, permanent minor and major protection at all time. That'll be very common. So I think that's going to be a big factor right there. We're getting the Battle Spirit change, plus everyone's going to have major protection now, like guaranteed. In addition to that, I think in Battlegrounds, at least in the sweaty matches, in the high MMR sweaty matches, I think you can pretty much rest assured that you're going to have major and minor maim applied to you at all times as well. Unless you're just constantly cleansing, but then you might be blowing yourself up because of that new set, right? But everyone's going to be maimed, and maim reduces your damage, right, by 10 and 5%. So the frost mages are coming. The winter is coming. Right?
It's going to be a tidal wave of frost mages. It's happening. They're coming. And you'll get into some details here, but the one problem, kind of the same thing we were just talking about. The thing that I'm not crazy about on these frost mages, it's all going to be almost the same build. It's going to be a whole bunch of frost mages with very similar setups. I'm not really looking forward to that either.
I think we'll see a lot of people running similar setups, but I think we'll also see a lot of people just running a frost staff, even if they're not necessarily trying to be a frost build.
Yeah.
And we've even seen that in the past. Like, I've seen metas where it was pretty common for MagDKs to use a frost staff just because of it's useful in a lot of ways. But yeah, you're totally right. A particular frost build is absolutely going to be super duper popular. But the thing is, frost damage always has a chance to apply minor maim, right? It applies the chilled status effect, which gives you minor maim. So anytime any frost damage touches you, there's a chance that could happen. And there's going to be a lot of frost mages around, and at the very least, just a lot of frost staves around. But in addition to that, they've updated Destructive Touch so that it now is guaranteed to apply a status effect, depending on the type of staff you're using. So if you're using a frost staff, that's guaranteed chilled status effect, which gives them minor maim. So it's not even a chance there, it's guaranteed.
That's pretty crazy. A guaranteed stat effect. That's pretty wild.
Well, if you think that's crazy, the Destructive Clench, the Destructive Clench morph, one of the new things they're adding to it is it's now guaranteed to apply major maim.
Oh my goodness.
The base ability guaranteed to give minor maim, and now this morph major maim. So you're giving them both at the same time. One really cheap ability. The cost is 1,336 Magicka. You could cast that all day. That's basically, may as well be free.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
And it also that morph, the Destructive Clench morph with a frost staff, will immobilize your enemy, which will proc Hrothgar's Chill, that new frost damage set. That'll proc that set. Also, since you're giving them the chilled status effect while holding a frost staff, that means they're guaranteed to get minor brittle. So now all the conditions have been met to activate the Frostbite 5-piece bonus. One ability.
And there's the Frost Mage build.
Yeah. Don't even slot any other abilities.
Don't need it.
So anyway, that's going to be super popular. And like I said, I think you can basically just rest assured that those status effects are going to be on you at all times, in addition to everyone having major and minor protection at all times. So I think the Battle Spirit change is pretty minor, honestly, in comparison to these other things that are now possible. Yeah.
Major and minor maim is going to be on you at all times. Almost every Magicka character is going to be able to throw major and minor maim on you. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of like a Warden. You don't even necessarily have to be trying to be a Frost Warden specifically. Just equip a Frost Staff and do a normal whatever Warden build, and you use this particular ability, and it's going to be super powerful. I expect it to go live like that, but I expect it to something about this setup to get nerfed in the future at some point. I think they're going to let people have their fun for a little while. People have been banging the doors down for frost mages for so long. Yep. They're going to let them be OP for a little while. I say fine. I don't think I'm going to enjoy it because with frost damage comes a lot of snares, a lot of immobilizations, a lot of it's difficult to move around. So you're definitely going to want some snare removal in your builds.
You're just going to play on your MagPlar the whole time.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to feel it out. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. Or my Warden, I think, will actually fare pretty well in my Magden.
Yep.
So let's do one last round of tooltip fun. Let's take that 1,000 tooltip. Let's add another 0 to it. So now it's a 10,000 tooltip. So for like a good build with good stats, it's like a spammable.
Yeah.
Let's say that all those factors combined, we're going to apply major maim, minor maim. We're going to go up against an enemy with 20k resistance, which is low.
Yeah.
But that's 30% mitigation. And let's assume they have major protection and minor protection. So all of that added up, our 10,000 tooltip on the live server is going to hit them for 2,850. And if we hop over to PTS with the Battle Spirit change, that's 2,558. So 2,850, 2,558. That's right at about a 10% difference. But the way I think of it is on live, we can kind of get rid of major protection and major maim because those aren't like necessarily guaranteed to always be present right now.
Yeah, they're not easy. They're not
aren't.
easy right now. It's not super easy to get on a character compared to what PTS is. Yeah,
exactly. So, if you factor those out but leave them in on the PTS equation because they're guaranteed to be there on PTS, then it's going to end up being more like a 27% difference in damage. Live, without those being factored in, that 10,000 tooltip is 3,530 versus the 2,558 on PTS. So that's like 1,000 difference. That's a pretty big difference, about 27%. And I think that's in a lot of fights, that's actually like the difference you're going to perceive is going to be in that ballpark there because of all these new elements that will be in the environment.
At the end of matches, nobody's going to say GG anymore. It's just going to be stay frosty.
Yeah. It's funny because I think a lot of things are about to get kind of popular. I mean, I think Frost Mages are going to be really popular. I think Magicka Templars are going to be very popular as well. Yep. They're getting some really nice buffs. I think Necromancers are going to continue to be very, very good. They're not necessarily getting any particular buffs, but they're just very good already.
I feel like Frost buffs are kind of a Necromancer buff in a way. That's a common... Warden has more frost abilities, but there's some frost stuff that ties to Necromancer, Magic and Necromancers for sure.
It plays into their play style very nicely. It synergizes really well with how they play. Definitely, it's all about AOE and kind of locking down a piece of ground, and frost damage is really good for that. Totally. So that's what's going on with all of that stuff. I want to talk just a little bit about this trend towards hybridization that we're kind of headed towards, which I'm all for. I think it's cool. But there is kind of one, I don't know if it's a concern, but just something I'm kind of thinking here. So if you remember, with this upcoming update, armor passives are being updated so that they grant both types of offensive stats, right? Any offensive stat that the passives give you, it's going to be both Magicka and stamina versions of those stats, which I think is really cool. It's going to open up a bunch of new possibilities, particularly for stamina builds. So like Stamsork, for example, could viably use Haunting Curse or Mage's Wrath, or both, in their combo. Like my Stamsork with his current build, logged into PTS, he gets about a 10k tooltip on both of those.
I think you misheard me, or I said nerf them more. Nerf them more.
Yeah, so an extra, 20k worth of burst potential on a Stamsork. I think some Stamsorks are going to be trying that out.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen for sure.
Stamplar, my Stamplar on PTS with her current build, Breath of Life, has about a 10k tooltip.
Mm-hmm.
Stamina Necromancer, the Spirit Guardian, little healing ghost that follows you around. On PTS, my StamCrow has a 4200 tooltip on that thing. Heals me every 2 seconds for that amount, which is very good. On top of it, it's 10% damage mitigation as well. Another thing I thought of, a Stamina Dragon Knight could viably use Molten Whip and finally have a source of big burst damage that they've been lacking for so long. My StamDK on PTS, if you get all 3 stacks of Molten Whip, it's in the ballpark of about a 20k tooltip, which is really nice. Now, it's not delayed burst the way like Sub-Assault is, so they can't combo it with stuff, but I mean, I bet if you leap someone and then 20k Molten Whip, that'll have an effect.
They'll notice that.
Yeah. The only concern, or I don't know if it's a concern, but the thing is, it seems to really, I think it's mostly going to benefit stamina builds. It's mostly going to open up options for stamina builds. It technically opens up options for magicka builds too, like stamina abilities will be more powerful on magicka builds, but I don't think most magicka setups are going to want to be spending a lot of stamina on their abilities and risk getting their stamina bar too low and not be able to defend themselves. That's what I'm thinking. So it's mostly going to be like, I think stamina builds specifically are going to be closer to hybrid builds. And then magicka builds are still just going to be magicka builds, but they're much more capable than they used to be before Flames of Ambition, though. Kind of have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else you want to add to any of that stuff?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like you said, I think you made a good point. They're both kind of hybrid builds. It's unique, though, because they're both kind of different hybrid builds. I'm talking about Stamina and Magicka. Stamina, the hybrid, is going to be very mixed Magicka and Stamina with abilities. Whereas Magicka, we've always talked about their hybrid is kind of damage and support. So,
well, it's kind of nice, or I don't know if nice, but it's kind of nice. It kind of gives stamina builds a reason to maybe invest in Magicka again, because ever since the Flames of Ambition patch, I don't invest a drop of stat points into Magicka on my stamina builds. They have the base amount is more than enough on all of them. So now they might have a reason to actually invest.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of a buff to the old classes. The new classes and kind of updated abilities. I'm talking about Necromancer and Warden mostly. But most of their morphs, they have kind of the Stamina and Magicka version. But on the older classes, almost all the class abilities are Magicka. And even when you morph them, it's 2 Magicka choices. And so it's kind of a buff to those older classes that it kind of opens up the possibilities for them a little bit more to use some of those class abilities that they maybe weren't any good for characters before.
Totally. And some of them, like Stamplars, they have the Magicka to spare. To use some of those, they don't really have a need to use a lot of Magicka as it is currently. So a reason to actually use some of that Magicka, some of that resource that's just sitting there doing nothing a lot of the time, is going to be nice for them.
Here's the deal. I've got to admit to a shortcoming. It's blasphemous. I'm just going to start off with that. Blasphemous.
You've been playing WoW again, haven't you?
Whoa, absolutely not. No, my blasphemy is just that it's summer. I have 3 children. We've been traveling a lot on weekend. We did a vacation, and then I've missed 3 weekends in a row of playing time. So. My scrolling, it's a little light. I'm a little light right now. Don't worry, everybody. We'll get this in shape. When summer's over, I'll lock these kids back in a bedroom somewhere. Don't you worry.
I'll carry us through this podcast.
You're gonna have to carry us. I do have a couple updates. There's a couple things that I have to say. One, I have decided an upcoming change with the Davius build. Quick reminder of that build. That's the one that's the 5-piece Spell Power Cure, 5-piece Powerful Assault, Maelstrom Resto, and the Pearls of Elnefey, the 1-piece Trainee.
MagPlar, right?
MagPlar, Magicka Templar. Only heals, no damage. I'm going all in on this. With this new set coming up, this Magma Incarnate. It's the new monster set that's coming out that... It's the one that when you do a single heal, it kind of shoots the, I don't remember how it describes it, but it kind of shoots the buff out to somebody, and then that somebody shoots the buff out to 3 additional players.
It like bounces around.
Yeah, it bounces around. But what that does is that buff gives minor courage and minor resolve. So I am going to drop the Pearls of Eldafe, which makes me a little sad. That's a very Davius mythic item. But I'm going to drop that, and so I'm going to still keep 5-piece Spell Power Cure, 5-piece Powerful Assault, 2-piece Magma Incarnate, and then still have the Maelstrom Resto on the back bar. But I'm going all in on this unique support style build. So with all the buffs with this and this new setup, Davius will now give his teammates 952 weapon and spell damage buff. So we're just short of 1,000 weapon and spell damage buff for the entire team. And it's actually really easy to keep up. It's just the casting Vigor and Breath of Life.
Yeah.
And then, if I can overheal. So 1 Vigor, 1 Breath of Life before a fight kicks off the Powerful Assault. Or, I'm sorry, the Spell Power Cure, the Vigor for Powerful Assault. And then throw in my Breath of Life, kicks off the Magma Incarnate. So it's pretty easy to keep these buffs up. I've had a lot of fun with this type of support build. And so only going more all into it is going to be a lot of fun. I really like this type of setup and the fact that he's kind of become this different kind of support. He still offers heals, and his heals are still really good. But I like that the best part about him is actually not the healing. That's not the best part of support about him anymore. It's more about these team buffs.
Yeah. You can always tell when Davies is around, because you're like, man, I'm hitting a lot harder than I normally do. You're giving me more damage than like my equipment is giving me,
Yeah, I mean, and that's a way that I really look at it is, and I've said this in the past, when he doesn't do any damage, and when you don't do any damage, and I like the fact about him, it's become more of he's just become a meme about Davius now. He doesn't do damage. But when you don't do damage, you really got to make up for it with the team. But the fact that I'm giving 952 weapon and spell damage when all the buffs are up, I mean, you got to think about that in as way of sets. Or, there's not 952 weapon damage. There's not even a lot of builds all put together from their sets that are getting that much. It's
right.
That's a lot. That's a massive buff to give to the entire team. And it's a lot of fun that when I fully get things going, just to watch how hard the team starts hitting. It's a lot of fun.
Davius acts all pious, like, oh, I don't do any damage. But when we're in there, he's like, kill him!
Oh, joke. He's the blind healer that's going around yelling to kill people. He's not actually touching them, but he's definitely saying, this guy right here, take this, kill this guy, kill him.
And then the match is over, and he acts like he's so
hey,
high
guys.
and mighty.
I didn't touch
never
him.
killed a man in my life.
I just wanted to make sure you guys were, all healed up. No worries.
Yeah, we're on to you.
Love the Davius build. The other thing that I have to talk about, I've got to talk about my Thracian Strangler grind situation.
Okay.
It was a real grind. A real Davius struggle.
I've heard horror stories.
First of all, just don't even grind for it. I'm just telling you right now. If you're thinking about it, don't do it. Don't go down there. Don't go down that road. This is I have the worst luck when it comes to grinds. We've past episode listeners know this. This set, the first piece that you grind for, you have to fish up from I can't remember the zone. It's one of the starting. I think it's the DC starting zone. You have to fish up the actual lead for it. Not to knock people if they enjoy fishing in this game, but it's pretty uneventful, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's the true end game.
It's pretty simple, It's so that took me several hours and hours to fish up that lead. Once I got that done, I was like, okay. Because when I first looked at this, I thought, oh, this is going to be easy grind. There's no dungeon grinds for these leads. Usually when you look at something real quick, the dungeon grind's always like, I'll have to run that dungeon a couple times. But this one had no dungeon grind, so I fooled myself into thinking, oh, this is going to happen quick. This is going to be easy. First fish grind, several hours. Was out there forever. I was like, oh man, got it. I was like, okay, hardest part's done. Now it's really gonna kick into high gear. Next lead, another fishing lead. 2 fishing leads. You got to fish up 2 things for this thing. So yeah, that next fishing lead, that took me about 2 to 3 days to fish that thing up. I don't even like these things anymore. I got them, but I don't even like them. It was a mess to get these things. And then, if I thought those 2 were bad enough, I hit a couple easy ones. I'll give it to is world bosses, and I think then it's world bosses and then a public dungeon boss. So I was like, all right, now we're hitting the groove. And then the last one is Psijic portals. You have to grind Psijic portals, which those
How do you even find those?
Those aren't real common. There's not a map to find those. Tracking down Psijic portals, that one took me like another 2-3 days. And by that point, when I finally got it, I for some reason, I just don't give up when I should. I should have given up 3 days into this grind. Instead, I was like a week and a half into it. I got the dumb things. They are a lot of fun. They still have issues. There's a lot of issues with the item.
50 stacks.
50 stacks. Oh my gosh. It's when you have the 50 stacks, they're really fun. They're really good for PvE purposes. I like them a lot. But getting 50 stacks is not easy. And running a dungeon and trying to get 50 stacks, maybe by the second to last boss, you've got your 50 stacks up. Me and you talked about this. It's 50 stacks is just too many stacks. And the grind for these things was miserable.
Yeah. And it seems like they've just given up. They're like, yeah, it sucks. Sorry.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And that was kind of the one. I remember when those patch notes first hit and we were like, what are these things called mythic items? Ooh, Thracians. Yeah. That one looks the juiciest of them all. But it's been a bummer. Well, I've been doing a little scrolling. Would you like to hear about it?
Let's hear about your scrolling.
I have been doing a lot of Battlegrounds. Unlike you, I've been playing quite a bit.
Just rub it in.
Rub it in, why don't you? I've been doing a lot, mainly because I have a few builds that I've just been super duper into, so I've been enjoying playing them. My main squeeze the last couple of weeks has been Bobby Bobango, my Stamina Necromancer bow build. And this dude I've just been kind of chilling on for a while because he was totally a product of the proc meta. And he thrived there. And now since the Blackwood update, his build has basically been dead. And nothing's really been coming to me, but one day came and I was like, man, I really want to get this dude figured out. And I've kind of been doing this thing with all my characters where I sort of want to make these pure, what I think of as like pure builds, where they're not using any procs, and it's just really good stats, and they're totally just relying on their playstyle and their wits and knowing how to use their abilities, and that's how they're successful. But they're certainly not weak by any means. They have really strong firepower, really good survivability, and I think this dude is maybe the best example so far of a build that I've kind of put together that works really well that way. You'll probably laugh. He's using Heartland Conqueror.
What?
This is the third character I've put it on. It's just too good. I don't know. There's nothing else to say other than it's just nothing else gives the value that Heartland Conqueror does. When you compare the front bar offensive capability and the back bar defensive capability, there's just show me something else that gives me both of those things. My front bar only set, this is kind of a recent development. I'm using Spriggan as my front bar only set. I was really, really wanting to use Swamp Raider, but plain and simple, Spriggan's just better. Spriggan gives me more DPS, and even so Swamp Raider gives you 600 damage to your disease and poison abilities.
Yeah.
But even those abilities deal more damage with Spriggan. And the 2 through 4 piece bonuses are better on Spriggan. And there's no flavor lacking. Like Swamp Raider is a poison and disease, I guess, themed set, but there's no visual indicator. There's nothing that makes the build feel that way. So using Spriggan doesn't feel any different. it does more damage. It gives me better stats on the 2, 3, 4 piece. So I just gotta not fight it, and I just gotta use Spriggan. It's a boring set. It's one that, it's been a staple of PvP for a long time. But
yeah, that thing.
Good set's a good set.
Oldest time, that thing. It's just always held up. It's always been a good one.
Yeah, it's never been bad. So it's 5 Heartland, 5 Spriggan. Spriggan's just on the front bar with a sharpened bow. I have a powered Potentate's Greatsword on the back bar. Malakath and 1-piece Krog for a little extra penetration.
Bobby Bobango, but when he gets rolling, it's been known to go by Robert Bobango.
Robert Bobango is his father's name. Please. This dude's been my favorite, man. It's really fun to play with a ranged stamina build. And you kind of realize it's a great counter to Sorks. Sorks have been really, really popular. It's difficult to counter them as strictly a melee build. But Bobby, he has exactly the same range that a Sork has. And he can deal all of his damage from full long range. And he's out of range of their streak and all of that sort of stuff. So I've noticed that's been really good. But even in like big brawls with a lot of like melee players, he can just kind of sit back from a vantage point, kind of like a Sork does, and be tossing his damage into the fray. He's real kitey. He's fully speed capped, of course, like all of my characters. And damage is through the roof. Like even tanky characters. That's the benefit of stacking penetration versus weapon damage. Like weapon damage would be more effective against squishier targets, but penetration is more effective against tankier targets.
Yeah.
But the thing is, for squishy targets, you don't need a lot of damage.
Yeah.
You're gonna kill them anyway. So I've definitely noticed that I can take down some of the tankier players surprisingly well. But he's great, man. He's very well rounded. He has, like I said, really great firepower. That Heartland with the powered potentates on the back bar. And he has a mortal coil that gives you another 3% healing. So it's 21% bonus healing power on the back bar.
Good, nice.
And he's got minor protection from the Sigic ultimate. He's got 10% extra mitigation from the Spirit Mender. He's full medium. He only has 3 impen. He's a wood elf. Total full on roly poly bow build. But he can actually tank out a little bit of damage, more than most of my stamina builds.
I was going to say he's probably a little tankier than most people would realize.
He really is, surprisingly so. Like I've had a few people give up on him and like just go and fight someone else, which is surprising. He's not. I don't think of him as being tanky. Like he's real light on his feet, agile type of kitey play style. So it's cool. He just has it all. I mean, he's got the range, he's got the speed, he's got really good damage, he's got really good heals, really good sustain. He kind of hits all the bases. The only thing that kind of concerns me going into this next patch is he does not have a source of snare removal, and I really don't know what I would want to unslot to make room for it. Anyway, Stab Crow bow build. I highly recommend Heartland Spriggan. Great combo. And the one other build that I've been really, really into is Bad Sally, my Stamina Dragon Knight. I'm really psyched about this build because I think I finally got her in a place where I genuinely, thoroughly enjoy playing with this character.
She was overpowered before, but now it's just enjoyable.
Yeah, she's very powerful, very strong. Yeah, we've talked about before, like she was super overpowered during the proc stacking meta. She was a full on 4 procs with Malakath, just super cheese build. And it was fun for a few laughs for like a match or two, and then it's like, all right, let's knock off this nonsense. But now she's actually like just a really solid, well-rounded, good PvP build. Still very good damage, not to the absurd levels as before, but basically what she's lost in damage, she has gained in self-sufficiency. Because before, she basically had to have a healer, or she really could struggle quite a bit. But now, like I've been doing solo queue with her like over and over and over again, and she consistently gets really, really good results. The old build was 5 pieces Unleash Terror, 2 pieces Grothdar for the body, And then the Maelstrom two-hander, Master's dual wield, 2 trainee, and Malakath. The new setup basically just replaced the body pieces. 5 Bone Pirate, 2 Bloodspawn. And what's kind of funny about this is it was kind of like Bobby. I was like, man, I basically have been neglecting this character because her build died when the proc meta kind of went away. But then there was just one day I really wanted to play with her, and I didn't necessarily have an idea for a new build or anything. So I was just like, well, I probably have some stuff in my bank I can just throw on her that'll just work for a generic stamina build, and it'll probably be fine. I happen to have a spare set of Bone Pirate that's fully golded out with tri-stack glyphs on every single piece. So easy, put that on her. And then I have a bunch of Bloodspawn that's golded out and everything. And that's always good for a StamDK.
Yeah.
And then everything else is the same. Still the Maelstrom two-hander, still the Master's dual wield, and 2 trainee, Malakath. So I just swapped out the body pieces for more stat-based and defensive sets. And left everything else the same.
What I really like about this character in this build is that I think she's perfect proof that, the proc stacking isn't what it was. They kind of fixed that. But you can still use proc builds, proc sets really effectively. She's got proc sets still, and she uses them. They're fantastic.
Yeah, she's got the Maelstrom two-hander, the Master's dual wield, 2 arena weapons, and because she has so much better stats now, those things actually hit really hard. Mm-hmm. But I actually have to execute a combo, and I have to play smart, and I have to think about positioning and, the way I play with the rest of my characters. And it's actually a much more satisfying way to play than just gap closing from, like, gap close, execute over and over again, the way she used to do. So it's cool. She has always been kind of a whisper generator. It used to be whispers, basically mostly hate whispers that were like, talking crap about the cheesy build, which, understandable, totally.
Sure.
But I've been getting whispers of people now just asking me what the build is, which is kind of a nice change of pace. And it makes sense. It's not nearly as cheesy as it used to be, but people see a StamDK getting pretty good results in BGs, not the most common thing.
No.
And it's like surprisingly a really pretty basic setup. In other news, I sold all my gold rings from Midyear Mayhem, the gold vendor, and I'm like a billionaire now.
You're getting chauffeured around now. You don't even ride your own mounts. You have just people come and pick you up.
Yeah, I got a limousine guar. Pretty sweet. I'll load it up. I never spend my AP. I have, I think, like 33 million alliance points. And when that gold vendor popped up, I was like, well, I know a lot of these sets are really popular, so I'm just going to buy a whole bunch of these rings, wait a couple of weeks after the event ends, and then put them for sale. That's exactly what I did. I sold them for quite a bit less than what the market was, but still a lot.
Whole bunch
and they
of
all sold, and it's a lot of gold. So that's pretty nice. So if anyone...
so if anybody needs gold, reach out. Get Sparrowhawks.
Hit me up. One more thing, kind of related to PTS. At this point, week 3, things are pretty much locked in, which means there's no hope of us getting a deathmatch only queue in Battlegrounds. And since we're very focused on Battlegrounds, it's just worth mentioning. This is something that comes up literally every day. I would say at least half of the Battlegrounds that I'm in, there's an argument in the group chat about people focusing on the objective or not focusing on the objective. There's never a time when everyone's on the same page unless it's like a full pre-made squad. There's always arguments on the forums, on Reddit. It's just creating this toxic environment. We have one community of players who just want to deathmatch. That's all they've been doing for years, and now they just can't. And we have another community of players, totally understandable. They just want to get their dailies done. They just want to get these achievements. They just want to have a victory in a way that they feel like they can by focusing the objective. And I totally understand that. Both sides are right. Neither side's wrong. Yep. And it's just the situation that's been created. From our vantage point, Davis, we're in the camp of we just want a deathmatch. We just want to get in there and fight other players and test our builds out and do that sort of thing. And, typically less than 1 in 10 queues pop for deathmatch.
Yeah.
And you say you spend a Saturday night. This is my free time. I'm queuing up. I'm going to spend 3 hours of my evening queuing up. This is what I'm doing tonight. And I don't get a single deathmatch. I'm going to spend that whole time just sitting on flags and all of that. Like, that's not going to be a satisfying gameplay experience to me when, since Morrowind, I've been doing just deathmatch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a struggle right now for sure. And like you said, it really is creating kind of this toxic environment in Battlegrounds right now, because there's this argument about, the strategy players. They want to play on strategy and the objectives, and that's how they want to get a win. And then there's players like us that just want to do deathmatch. And it really creates a struggle with the interaction of players, the interaction of builds. Our builds are designed for deathmatch. And when you go into flag games or something where there's a whole team that's just tanky and they can't die, it's not really a good interaction. It's kind of created this weird environment where there's so many times that we'll queue up for a battleground, and it's at the end of the match we'll just be like, man, that was just a weird one. I'm glad that one's over. Hopefully the next one goes better. And
the players that are really serious about winning the objective, and that's really what their goal is, then a lot of the time engaging in combat is a bad idea.
Yep.
You'll lose if you do that. It's often the best strategy is to disengage, run away from fights. If someone shows up and tries to take your flag, just run to another flag, take that one. And I get it. I get the appeal of that, especially for people who maybe don't do a ton of PvP. They just kind of want to get their daily done and that sort of stuff, and that's how they can win. I totally understand, but it's frustrating when we had such a long time where none of this was an issue. Everyone could just do whatever they wanted. I hope something's done about it. There hasn't been a single developer comment on the forums, like not a peep. Any thread that comes up about it, there's never a developer comment unless it's just like, "Hey guys, be cool, be nice." That's all.
Yeah.
So it's a bummer, especially for something, like we've just been saying. It's like creating this toxic atmosphere. It's an issue every single solitary day, and it wasn't before.
Yeah, and it's a pain to go into every battleground, and there's probably going to be an argument, whether it's within your own team, or even if there's a team that's just playing the objectives and the other two teams are trying to do a deathmatch. Well, then the match ends in 4 minutes because the one team was the only ones playing the objective. So I really hope something changes going forward. I'm with you on that. I hope that maybe once they get the Cyrodiil stuff figured out and Cyrodiil changes, then maybe they can shift the focus back to some sort of deathmatch queue.
Maybe so. You'd think there'd be some peep about it at this point. I mean, it's been a while now. I hope you're right. Maybe their just priorities are elsewhere right now, and they'll circle back around later. I really do hope so. This is like our primary community that we hang out with. This is our thing, and it's really disrupting what we like to do in this game. Shout out to Grizzly Khan and Dr. Professor for joining us in chat yet again. Always welcome, gentlemen. Also, Dr. Professor, welcome to PCNA, the most dedicated goon. He jumped to a whole new platform just so he could be in Stoon's Goons.
That's how good a guild this is.
The best guild, Dr. Professor confirms. Stoon's Goons, best guild.
That's right. He actually told me it's not even really for the podcast. He enjoys the guild more than the podcast.
He just pretends to like the podcast so he could get in the guild.
So he can get in the guild.
Smart move.
For all the
Smart
benefits.
move.
Yeah,
all the benefits that we provide being a member of Stoon Goons. Like the guild hall. There we go, guild hall. We got a transmute station. Aha! We got the trial dummy. Crafting stations. They're coming one of these days. We'll get them.
There's crafting stations in there. They're just for the Ancient Dragon Guard set. They're not really. They're not the Stoon set. That's the biggest issue right now.
Well, if you want that particular set, or if you just need generic crafting stations, or if you just want to see a pretty cool home that has been decorated really nicely, Stoon's Goons Best Guild. You can email us at scrollandpodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to be invited to Stoon's Goons on PCNA. You can also email us just to ask us questions that you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, make suggestions for the show, tell us a joke, tell us a story, really whatever you like. Scrollandpodcast@gmail.com. I think that's probably about all we have.
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.